ladies, to number 5 in our series on When I Grow Up, I Want to Be Like Her. As we've been looking through this passage, we've seen some important things about this remarkable, valiant woman of Proverbs 31, this warrior princess. She's loving and strong. She's a strong leader, but she's also a willing follower. She's a planner and an entrepreneur. She's intentional. She works hard for her husband and her family, whom she loves, but she stretches out her hand of help to the needy, to those outside of that circle. She's adept and capable, but humble and teachable. Quite frankly, ladies, she's one of a kind. Why? Because her heart is right with God. God is her master. The commentary working preacher website puts it this way: not all of the hard work of this hardworking woman is adequately or accurately described as women's work. Not now, and certainly not in the patriarchal world of antiquity. The wife in Proverbs 31 is not in the kitchen scrubbing dishes and biting her tongue. She clearly takes care of her husband, verse 11 and 12. Her household, verse 15, 21, and 27. She excels at domestic activities, verse 13, 15, 20, 19, and 22. She's quite active outside the home as well. She's a successful businesswoman, considering a field and buying it, verse 16a. She's a viticulturalist. That's a wine grower to boot, verse 16b. And she's an entrepreneur who works late into the evening, verse 18. She plans ahead, verse 21. She's not idle, verse 27. She knows how to dress for success, verse 22, and how to sell goods for profit, verse 24. Her work compares favorably to the merchant marines, verse 14. And one suspects that the reason her husband is well known, verse 23, is because of her, not vice versa. But this woman does more than simply succeed in business or at domestic duties. She's not an uncaring tycoon. Instead, she opens her hand to the poor and reaches her hands to the needy. This woman is also far from silent. She speaks with wisdom and the teaching of kindness. Literally, the Torah or Hesed is on her tongue, verse 26. Her strength, that is, appears to be as much moral as it is physical. Once again, after reading this list, it's easy to throw up our hands and say, before we start, I give up. There's no way I could ever be like her. It's a losing battle. Why even try? And you know what? You're right. There's often that disclaimer. You've seen it on the bottom of a video of someone doing something risky or dangerous. It says, do not try this at home. Well, maybe what ought to be added under this, as a disclaimer under this description of the Proverbs 31 valiant woman is, do not try this alone. There is no way we can imitate this woman, not on our own anyway. It's only the woman who is walking close to the Lord who can become like this. It is He, and He alone, who gives her the heart's desire, the strength, the wisdom, the ability to become this kind of woman. She is the warrior princess, but her superpower comes from the King of Kings ruling in her life. Let's look together at the next 5 verses of this passage. Proverbs 31 verse 21 says, she's not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She's not afraid for the health and comfort of her family in winter, having provided clothes sufficient for each in the cold weather. Now, what does this mean? Is scarlet warmer than others? Is the color scarlet warmer? Some have suggested she could at least see her kids playing in the snow, but I don't believe that either of that is correct. When you take a look at the Hebrew here, it gives some clarity. In searching for information about this portion, I came across an old commentary by a man named Adam Clarke, 1762 to 1832. He was a British Methodist theologian and biblical scholar. I will use some of his statements, but as they were penned many, many years ago, I'll have to add some more modern terms in order to give clarity to his comments. He begins by saying, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. Not scarlet, for the color can avail nothing in keeping off the cold, nor would it be the proper color for the bogs and dirt of winter. The word is shanim, or from shana, meaning to perform repeatedly. To double signifies not only a scarlet, which is that because it's been twice or doubly dyed, but also double garments. Not only the ordinary coat, but like a man's overcoat or a cloak to cover over all. But most probably double garments or twofold to what they were accustomed to wear are here intended. Now this certainly makes sense. Winter in Israel is between December and early March. There's often heavy rains in January and February, and it may even snow in parts of the country. Temperatures range from 50 to 60 Fahrenheit in most places, but in the 40s in Jerusalem and Galilee hills, where it can be very cold at night. Wearing 2 sweaters here in Canada in the winter may not keep us from freezing, but in Israel, in that climate, it would work. Once again, we see her going the extra mile to prepare properly for the coming months for her family. Pretty simple and logical, it seems to provide them with heavier garments so that they will be warm and protected against the elements. Now verse 22, she makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is of fine linen and purple. I believe here we see that she cares that she herself is presentable. The word coverings means tapestry. Fine linen and purple are a color of position and authority. The dye comes from snails, apparently, only found in the Eastern Mediterranean. 10,000 snails were required to dye just one toga. This was no easy or cheap outfit to make. Proverbs 31 woman's clothing reflects her character. She, of course, ensures that her family's needs are met, as well as that of the rest of her household. But she also takes care of her own appearance. She's classy, and she takes time to sew herself clothing of fine linen and purple, without being showy. Why do you think this is important? Well, let's chat a bit about first impressions. What do people see when they see you, when they meet you? It's not your personality or your intellect, it's how you look. First impressions look on the outside before they look on the inside. How we present ourselves is directly connected to how people will react or respond to us. If I stand up before a group of women to speak looking either like a slob or a runway queen, it will affect how they hear what I say and how they will receive it. I need to think about the message I am trying to give and how my appearance might affect the reception of that message. If I don't care about my appearance, they get the impression that maybe I don't care about what I'm going to say either, what I'm sharing either. If I'm unkempt and disheveled, it may cause others to keep their distance, put up a guard, or discount what I have to say even before I open my mouth. Likewise, if it is apparent that I have been extravagant with my wardrobe and appearances, some may say I'm self-absorbed or self-centered. They may feel I'm unapproachable and possibly unable to help them in their life either. They may feel afraid to approach me. I'm not advocating that we become unbalanced or focused unduly on our looks and our impressions, but rather that we realize that we are not just representing ourselves. This woman represented her husband and her family and desired, I believe, to represent them properly. Her husband was a respectable man and honored among his peers, and she needed to dress with that in mind. The next verse tells us what kind of man he was. Verse 23 says, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Local affairs and decisions were made at the gates to the city, and a man's wife affects her husband's standing in the community. She either brings him honor or she brings him shame and pity. Our beauty comes from within our inner self, who we are, how we show God's love to others, not from the clothes we wear, the makeup we apply, or the jewelry we put and add to our accessories. But that is what people see. And so we need to be aware of the message we present by our outer appearance. We are daughters of the King, and so we need to dress with that in mind too. We are representing Jesus as we go about our lives. We need to dress in ways that reflect humility and service and honor to Him. This doesn't take a lot of money. Just some thought and preparation. And I believe this is the principle here that we can take from this verse. Dress appropriately, as if you were going to be standing in front of the Lord, because you know what? You already are. Verse 24 says, she makes linen garments and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. We've already seen over and over in this passage that she was eager and efficient worker and prepared wisely and provided a well thought out, well-made product, whether it was for her husband, her family, herself, or for others. Once again, we see our valiant woman was able to work and willing to work hard to accomplish that admirable task. She made her own fine linen. She was not just the middleman or the merchant. She was the manufacturer. She actually made what was called in those days girdles. Girdles in the Bible were large belts or sashes that were used to gird up long flowing tunic-like garments. Well-made sashes were highly valued. Virtually everyone needed sashes, so the market would be almost limitless if her products were good. We've seen that she works into the night on projects, meaning she gives time that is needed to do a good job. As believers, we need to be aware that our work ethic is strong. Nothing ruins a testimony like a lazy Christian who does a slipshod job and expects to be paid well for it. Our testimony begins with being willing to work hard, to get our hands dirty, and to be honest. And finally today, let's look at verse 25. Verse 25 says, strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. Strength and dignity or honor are her clothing. What does that tell us about her strength, about her, about this warrior princess? Well, it says that strength and dignity are important. In fact, they're vital for her. They are not something she intrinsically has as part of her personality. These are something she puts on. She never parts with them. They serve her like clothing or protection or an ornament. Where does she find them, or where does she get them? It's not something she works up or speaks into her own life or convinces herself she has. It's not the power of positive thinking. This strength and dignity do not come from within her, but from above, from her relationship with God, her master. 1 Peter 3:3 says, your beauty should not come from outward adornments, such as elaborate hairstyles or wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, the godly woman will be clothed with her Christ-like character. Strength not in herself, but in God, and her calling as a believing woman, wife, and mother. Once again, if it would depend on me to conjure up enough strength to do what God has for me to do, I'd never make it. I'm just not that ability. I don't have that ability. I'm not that strong. If God calls you to it, he will give you the strength and ability and wherewithal to accomplish it. An area called connectusfund.org, when speaking about this verse, said, with strength and dignity, the particular qualities that this verse describe as the adornment of the godly woman are strength and dignity. These traits fit nicely together, as you won't find strength of character without the dignity that accompanies it. And you won't find dignity in a person who is weak. Unfortunately, the culture has redefined what a strong woman is. It seems to mean sassy and insolent and disrespectful and undignified. The world sees anger and calls it strength. The world celebrates emotionalism as strong, even in men. This is a deception. True strength of character comes from the strength of God, of the Holy Spirit, that only comes in union with God through Christ. Think about that, ladies. When you clothe yourself with the strength that only God can give, and the dignity that you can only find in walking close to him in obedience, you will be able to look at the future with confidence and walk forward with surety that God has it all under control. I love the verse in Exodus 14, verse 13 and 15. The Hebrews had come to the edge of the Red Sea, and the armies of Egypt were barreling down on them. They cried out, as they often did, blaming Moses and saying, it would have been better to stay in Egypt. But his reply was maybe what we all need to hear someone say firmly to us every once in a while. Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent. Then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. Sounds a lot to me like he's saying to the Hebrews, and often says to us, quit whining and trust me, move forward, and I have it all under control. Just watch. You know, when I get that principle in my head that God has this under control, then I can relax and I can do what I need to do. I can confidently walk on in my life with the strength that God will look after the details. What a wonderful thought to close with today. With all the turmoil that's going on around us in the world, we can find peace and hope in God. Why? Because he's God. I know who holds the future, and I know who holds my hand. This last year and more has been oppressive and difficult in so many ways. It seems that the life we once had is gone, but God is still on the throne. God is still in control. And that God, he's my God. He's your God. He has promised to be with us to the end, to empower us to face whatever the evil in this world around us throws to our way. There is nothing he cannot do. He is King of kings and Lord of lords, Melech HaMelechim. We may go through trial and suffering, but he will go through it with us. He will strengthen us all along the way. He has promised never to leave us or forsake us. He's promised always to be with us, even to the end of time. When he has promised to take us to live eternally with him in heaven. Like the shepherd that leads his sheep, and they follow, so we must trust him to lead and move ahead with him. What wonderful truth to think about as we end this session today. Psalm 23. I will quote from the King James Version because that's the text I learned it from as a child, and I have a terrible time reading it anywhere else. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our God is more than enough to carry us through like a warrior princess with strength and dignity. Blessings on all of you ladies today. Amen.